I'm your host, Dr. Lori, and welcome to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. This podcast fosters curiosity and understanding about neurodiversity while empowering individuals with tools for acceptance and inclusion in classrooms, the workplace, and communities. Featuring shared stories of neurodiverse life experiences, it sheds light on navigating a world not designed for diversity. Universally Unique starts now. Hi, this is Dr. Lori Noto. Welcome to Universally Unique. My guest today is Sebastien Pitches, who is the second of our interviews in the series of families. We're going to talk with Sebastien for this episode, and then for the next episode, we will talk with Sebastien's mother, Julie. But as we historically have done, we will take a few breaths to get us settled, and then I will ask Sebastien some questions and we will get going. So we're going to do 3 box breaths. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and repeat. I will not count because I think everybody kind of has their own breath pace, but I'll count the 3 breaths. So we'll get started. Breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. And there we go. 3 breaths. That's usually all it really takes. 3 good ones to get settled. Have you used that technique before?
I have in some other groups I'm in.
Yeah, it's a good quick one. So what I would like for you to do is kind of give us a little bit of background about yourself. I think there's probably things about your history that you probably don't remember and that your mom will fill in for us when we talk with her with our next episode. But tell me a little bit about kind of the path that you're on, the journey that you have taken. You're and from my perspective, a relatively young man still. You're still in your late 20s, so you've got a lot ahead of you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, perfect. So as you all know, I'm Sebastien Pitches. I'm 28 years old. I was born and raised in Connecticut, but I've also lived for a short while in France when I was a baby and in Long Island during my 4th and 5th grade years. But ever since then, I've been living in Connecticut ever since. And more specifically, I grew up in the Fairfield County area. So like Fairfield, Bridgeport, Stratford, that's kind of the bubble I grew up in. And now I live in New Haven.
Okay. So you've lived quite a few of your years in fairly large cities.
Yes, well, I actually grew up in Fairfield, which is, a modest sized town. It's known for having good quality schools and there's a good amount of life to it as well, especially if you go to downtown Fairfield, because that's like where Fairfield University is near. You'll see like a lot of cool businesses and such. But yeah, as far as my schooling is concerned, being in Fairfield schools really helped me a lot. It helped that I had teachers who understood, paraprofessionals who were willing to help when I needed it, and other friends whom were big parts of my life in childhood and to an extent even in adulthood.
So have you still have some friends from school?
Oh yeah, I actually went to a birthday party back in May for a friend of mine who was turning 30. And I got to reunite with some other friends that I met who live in Fairfield, specifically mostly those from summer school and adaptive camp.
Okay. So you spent part of your time at school in special education classes and then some of your time in general education classes?
Yes. Yeah, that was how the setup was. At first, when I was like going to preschool, it was exclusive. It was like exclusively special education.
Hmm.
And it was like typical preschool stuff that you would expect. And then and then when I started transitioning to public school, I can remember like I was in special education classes, but I was also part of the regular ed. So it's not like I was like isolated from the rest of the world, which is good.
Exactly. I agree. Yep.
Yeah. I can't say that though for my fifth grade year because I was in a self-contained classroom. I was first in a gen ed classroom, but then, you know, um, some some traumatic stuff came up and I wasn't myself. And after like a week of suspension, they placed me in a self-contained classroom, which is where I stayed for the rest of the year. And it was certainly a different experience. Whenever we would go to like UA, Unified Arts classes like gym, art, etc., I would always be with sixth graders.
Hmm.
So I was mainly around people who were a little older than I was.
So that year when you lived in Long Island, you lived with your dad for a year.
Actually, 2 years. My mom was with me the first year, and the second year it was just me and my dad.
And I know that situation it is kind of complicated between the three of you. So there was probably a bit of a challenge to be there with him alone. Would
Yeah, without my mom and not having the adequate services I needed. Yeah, it left a lot to be desired
Okay. I'm
for
not sure that he understands your neurodiversity very well. Am I correct in saying that?
I mean,
Understand your
I
autism?
mean, he has known about it, but I mean, but at times we would have arguments about like, am I really autistic or not? But these days, he's, we've been getting along better.
Oh,
And
great. I'm glad to
he's,
hear that.
more understanding of, my neurodiversity and all that stuff. But even he agreed that the school system I was in during my fifth grade year wasn't that adequate because I went to two different schools. The fourth grade year was at a now defunct charter school.
Oh, okay. So I think,
Um,
that's lots of changes. You started in one school district, you went to a school that closed, you went to another school in a community that was relatively new for you because you hadn't been living there. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
yeah, and yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and I don't really get in touch with the people from Long Island. It's kind of like a black chapter almost
Yeah. Yeah. Some
because,
things just
there
are
was
better
just,
to leave behind, huh?
yes, yes.
So when you came back
Um,
to Connecticut, you you were in the Fairfield Public Schools at that time?
yes, and even before I moved to Long Island, I was in Fairfield Public Schools. And before that, I was at CES in Trumbull.
Okay. So how was you came back and then you did middle school and high school there, and how was that?
So overall, they were good experiences. I did need a lot of help readjusting because after a year being in a self-contained classroom with students from other grades, we had it was me in fifth grade, two sixth graders, and a seventh grader.
Mm.
So it was kind of a mix there. But when I was in but I remember when I was in sixth grade, I had a lot of trouble with things, getting used to the routine, like, requiring to have a book at all times, and you know, it had to be like, quote unquote, a real book, not like, the Captain Underpants books I was used to reading as a kid. Um,
So the
but
expectations for your academics were much higher.
yeah, it felt like kind of a culture shock, almost like, wait, what? We're actually like doing real work with, multiple teachers and all that stuff. And, it took a bit. I remember, I had to be, I had my paraprofessional who, was always in the classrooms with me. And sometimes I would collab with a special ed teacher who also knew the subject well. So, everyone was pretty well versed in things. And, I admit I wasn't too fond of needing an escort all the time to go from class to class or for, every little thing. I mean, even down to lunch, who I sit with.
Yeah, that's
But
kind of
in
weird when
time,
you're all a little bit older that you have an adult person following you around. Most kids
well,
don't
I
do that very
mean,
much.
right. Well, it may be necessary for some people because everyone has different needs, and some people navigate the world differently than others.
Mhm.
The way I function and navigate may not be the same as how someone else functions and navigates.
Exactly. So by the time you were in high school, did you still have the paraprofessional or were you a little bit
Oh
more?
no, that got phased out
Oh,
like
good,
in eighth
good.
grade. And, at ninth grade, when my mom was in panic mode because she actually when I lived with my two older stepbrothers on my old stepdad's side, he
Uh-huh.
would, my mom was always the one who attended the all meetings and such that concerned my two older stepbrothers. So
Oh,
so she's visited the high school that I would then attend, and she just did not get good vibes. And, she basically was like, a was insistent that, I have escorts to every class and have this set of rules and all that stuff. And they did implement it, but as soon as you realize how self-sufficient I actually am and how well I can function, like it kind of fell apart and was almost laughable to them. So they just like threw it out entirely.
well, it was probably good to start
And,
that way to make sure that that you had what you needed and then to get that out of the way. She is quite a strong
right.
advocate, sometimes a little too pushy, right?
Yes,
Well,
yes, is the case. She is a very strong, yeah, she's advocated for me the whole way through. Made sure that I got everything I needed. But I've also gotten better at advocating for myself too. And even without the need for paraprofessionals, I was in classes where like there was a student who had a paraprofessional. So, like it was there if I needed it, but it also didn't feel, but I mean, it was like a remainder of it kind of stuck.
yeah,
And we all get along. We all get along cool. If I need help, I need help. If I don't, I don't.
perfect.
It's that
That's the
simple.
way we should all be, right?
Hmm.
Yep. So I know you finished high school. You got a high school diploma, and then what happened?
So actually, I didn't exactly graduate high school. I completed the requirements, but I stayed an extra year for what they call the community part. or
Mhm.
the CPP, and the community partnership program is an 18 to 21 program where they primarily focus on life skills for their students who have graduated but may need extra help on the outside. And it manifested in a lot of ways. I know when I was there, the way it was the first semester was I had was, I actually went to Norwalk Community College for a semester, but I could only do
Oh, that's
one
awesome.
class for that one semester because, I was not, I didn't really graduate high school. And so I couldn't get financial aid, which was a real bummer because, like, how are you supposed to continue school without, a high school diploma? So I did that for a semester, but most of the time, the average schedule would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So every morning, so let me backtrack. Every morning we would work out at the gym for like an hour or so.
Well, that's good.
And yeah, and I really got into the rhythm of it, I remember. I remember learning how to do the plank that year, and it was challenging, but
A hard one, yeah.
I was so into the routine that even when, on the Tuesdays and Thursdays I'd go to Norwalk Community College, I still did the workout routine.
That's a good habit to
Because,
have.
right, because, I didn't want to break that rhythm.
Hmm.
Uh But yeah, so yeah, we would work out every morning. Okay. Then we would meet at a community place because, we take place in the community. So, we've met at Fairfield University, the senior center, either or it could be that. And, we do like, writing, and we do like different assignments that pertain to life skills, like figuring out a recipe or planning a trip, because we did a lot of trip planning.
Did you
And
take any of those trips?
some of them we did. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those would be the days where we would actually do our like community activities or take our trips. And we've taken a lot of unique trips. Most of them stayed within the Fairfield Bridgeport area. I know one trip we had to the Trumbull Mall, one we had to the Milford Mall. Um,
Did
I
you take
remember we
public
had a
transportation?
Yes, we did. We took public transportation, the train and bus. Took the train to New Haven a couple of times, which was fun.
Yeah. I
Um,
understand that you are very, very good at the bus and the train schedule.
oh yeah, you can thank travel training for that. It's a program in Connecticut where, offered by the Kennedy Collective, where, they train adults with disabilities on navigating public transit. And the other nice thing too is Mark Primavera actually signed me up to get my reduced fare transit ID. So if you're a senior or a person with a qualifying disability, you can actually get a reduced fare ID card. It used to be this yellow card that you show to your driver and they would just give you half off of the fare. But then they changed it and now it's a Go CT card,
Okay.
which, you know, you can show it to drivers on throughout the whole state, but if you're in the New Haven, Stamford, or Hartford area, you can also load money onto it and tap it to
Oh,
pay your fare, and it automatically deducts the reduced fare rate. So
that's a
for
helpful
two
thing.
hours, it's 85 cents, and for all day, it's $1.70. And um, yeah, and after a certain number of days you use it, you get a free ride. It's helped me a lot, especially in recent years.
So I know you went to the community college after you finished that transition
Hmm.
program to get your associate's degree. So were you using public transportation to get there?
Yes, and it was a long trip. Um, Taking the train and bus to get there. And we didn't have U-Pass back then, which is what Connecticut state community colleges and universities offer now, which lets you take any in-state public transportation, train and bus for free.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on the train, you just have to tell the conductor where you're heading so they can log that. But it helped me when I would go to Housatonic a couple years later.
So
But
you did your associate's degree at Housatonic Community College in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And
well,
now
I would
what's next?
continue my degree. The When I was at Norwalk, I only did I only took an English class because that's what I tested for. I tested into English 101, and I decided to just take that one class. And after that, I decided not to pursue college any further because I didn't have the financial means to do so.
Well, it was a good start though, because then you knew what it would be like, and then
Right. But a
back.
couple of years later, when I decided to go back to school, I decided it was time for me to get an associate's degree in something that mattered. And, that's so,
So what
but
is
that
your
happens later
associate's
on.
degree in?
The associates was in computer info systems.
Okay. So in the fall, you are starting your bachelor's degree, the
Yes.
last 2 years that you need for that. What will you be studying?
Also computer info systems. Well, it's actually computer science with the information systems as the concentration.
Okay, that sounds good. And I understand that you are really good at helping people who don't understand what they're doing on the computer,
Yeah, I help with
primarily your
I
mother.
yeah, I only know so much, but I try to make use of what I know about
Yeah, but you're a good
technology.
teacher, from what I understand, and you help folks problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'll be a good skill when
Mm-hmm.
you finish that degree. So I'd like to ask you a couple other questions. Now I think we kind of caught up to where you'll be in the fall. So tell me, who would you say are the most influential people in your life? Who are the people who championed you the most?
If I had to pick a few, in my school journey, there were quite a few people who did. One woman that stood out to me was Mrs. Labrandy. She was my paraprofessional in sixth grade. And I think the best thing she could have ever done was help to preserve a friendship. Because I remember in my language arts class, there was a kid across from me who had a Captain Underpants book. And I was intrigued by that because, like, oh, you'd think, the love for those books is dead, but not to him.
Yeah,
And when my teacher paired us up, we just clicked. And my parrot took note of that. And she made sure that, we stayed friends and that we
good.
let our friendship build and continue. And she just helped me, you know, be more social.
Well, and that can be hard sometimes, can't it?
Yeah, it can. Being social was always difficult for me. But I remember she made a positive impact on me. Um, my special ed teacher from high school, Mrs. Merritt.
Hmm.
She was another positive influence. she always believed in me. Oh, I see we have 3 minutes left.
A half hour goes very fast. So anyone else?
My mom, yeah, she's been a fierce self-advocate.
Yeah, she is. Yep, that was how I met her. She talked me into helping her with something, and I didn't even know who she was.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what do you think your superpower is? If you were going to be a superhero, what's your superpower?
Um, Probably speed because, it's like I feel sometimes I have rapid fire knowledge and I do things so quickly, which, you know, like can also be a rush, but like when you know something and you have a good knowledge of it, it's easy to do it quick, but other times it may not be so easy to be quick when, you have to take your time. I know I had a job that, once had a job that emphasized being quick on everything.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm just trying to make sure I, actually get it done right rather than, rush, and that would piss them off, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I think when you're processing things and you understand them and you know them, it's easier to be fast as you're learning something. Then you probably do need to be a little bit slower. So
Mm-hmm.
tell me about the community that you've built up to support you. I know you have some folks that you've connected with that are kind of outside of education. So
Oh
can you?
yeah, I have a variety of communities. I have my various online communities. I have my in-person communities, the people I know from Bridge House, Fellowship Place, from high school, from my time at Housatonic, from um, then there's my family, and it just feels like you have endless support, and it can be hard to process at times, and my mom, was telling me earlier, she expects me to have, like 25 friends at Southern, which is like, how am I going to do that?
Yeah, well, but that may be something that you might have to renegotiate with her. But it sounds like you have a good support network. I think many people who are neurodiverse find themselves oftentimes very isolated without enough people to kind of either talk to or help them out in situations that they're having a hard time. So I think it's wonderful that you have this community around you, and you seem to seek out community. Like you're not trying to avoid engaging with people.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really good. I think that you are going to do really well and at Southern. And I think that you probably will have quite a few friends. I don't know if we'll hit the 25 mark right away, but you might renegotiate that with her. Sebastien, I know our time went really quickly. I very much appreciate you coming and visiting with us. And perhaps once you get into the semester, get into school, maybe a little bit later in your first year, we'll check back in with you and see how things are going.
Okay, I'd be
So
open to that.
yeah, I really appreciate you meeting with us today. So thank you all for listening and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. Join me, Dr. Lori, on Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Monday at 11:30 Pacific Time as we continue to explore navigating a world not designed for diversity. For advocacy and support for individuals with disabilities, let's connect. Learn more about consulting and life coaching at notoholisticconsulting.com.